All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this Thursday's Roundtable Mastermind. My name is E.R. Wolf with Elify, and really we spend this time talking about a singular topic in an effort to help you guys overcome or address some of the things that are surrounding that topic in your own personal life so that you can improve and move forward. And today's topic is no different. Today's topic is getting started and taking that initial action. And I've really got one question for everybody on here to start this conversation and to start thinking about this is, what is holding you back? Okay, I know for all of us, this could be something different, but I want you to take a second, take an opportunity to think to yourself, what is holding you back specifically? And we all have areas or items. I see it more often than not, right? There's a reason why. Let's just take weight loss, for example. 80% of people who lose it get it back. They don't get into that long-term habit, or they want to go and take action on implementing that weight loss plan or that new eating plan, etc. And then they can't get over that initial force of friction to get started. Right. So they've done all the thought work. They maybe even have created a plan. And then it's hurry up and wait. Maybe it's analysis paralysis, right? I got to have everything perfect in my plan laid out perfectly. Maybe it's things like we talk about making a plan, and then we talk about preparing to execute that plan. And that's preparing means having the knowledge, right? So maybe you're lacking specific knowledge to get started. There's something you need to know or learn, right? A skill. Maybe there's a skill that you need to acquire in order to take that initial action or first step in getting started. So, a knowledge, a skill, a tool. Maybe there's a tool out there that you need to have or to get in order to implement the getting started process. And again, this is going to be universal in my opinion, just from my own personal experience in every area. And we talk about success as this balance of all the areas that we're working on. When you're going and changing or making a change, and we all have a choice every day to choose what we're going to do and what actions we're going to take. So in order to affect change, we have to change our choices. And hopefully those choices that we're making on the actions that we're taking are in alignment with a plan that we've put together. But again, more often than not, when I'm talking to people, they might have fleshed out their plan. They might have all of the information. They might have all of the skills, the knowledge, and the tools, and they're still sitting there not taking action. So the big question, what is holding you back? And this is a self-exercise on it. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's past experiences, good and bad, right? Sometimes it's self-imposed limitations that we impose on ourselves, a thought or a belief that might not even be true, but it's restrictive. Sometimes I see this, we talk about physical health, maybe there's an inability to execute on something specific because of a physical limitation, understandable. Sometimes it's a mental block. Mental health is a huge reason, right? I hear a lot, right? A guy would say fear, right? The acronym, false evidence appearing real. We get into that mental block of fear of success. We're going to subconsciously restrict ourselves because we're afraid of actually making it happening, or even more so, fear of failure, right? I don't want to do it or take action because I'm afraid I won't do it right or it won't work. And the reality is, I don't know a single thing in my life. And I ask you the same. Do you know of something in your life where you've been able to get started and do it, but it didn't take an initial action or didn't take an initial buildup? Everything I know of, independent of what area it is, right? Whether it's your business, whether it's your finance, whether it's your health, whether it's your family, it all requires some amount of activity and action. After you take that initial action, after you discover, and maybe it's multiple things, what is holding you back, and you decide, all right, I know what that initial action is to take to get started, then you get started. And here's the reality when I see that. The next hurdle that most of us have to overcome once we get started is staying relentlessly consistent on the new action that we've just taken. And we've talked a bit about this on past roundtables, where we talk about what what we read in that, I think it was Jim Clark or Jay Clark's Atomic Habits, right? Where you have to take and get that initial start going, and then it's about repetitions. Some people say, oh, it takes 21 days to build a habit. Well, maybe if that habit is something you do 3 times a day, 21 days is a pretty good amount. I like to think of any habit or action that I take, especially when I get started, as a terms of repetition. When you're executing your plan and your actions are happening repeatedly, daily, multiple times per day, possibly weekly, biweekly, monthly, it's all about the repetitions. You have to stay consistent. I don't know of a single path, unless we're talking about singular action goals, where you can only do the action one time and then it's done with. Most everything we know, if we're engaging in a new quote unquote practice, requires repetition after we get started. And it's the consistency of that repetition over time that turns it from this focused, I need to know what I need to do, and I need to be focused and diligent about taking action, to some subconscious action that we take all of the time. And it's funny because I'm a father of 2 young kids, and I see my kids learning new habits almost on a consistent basis. It's amazing to watch children grow up and learn and implement new things, whether it's riding a bike, learning to swim, or something as simple as the morning routine that we're all comfortable with, right? Getting up, brushing our teeth, getting ready, cleaning up, getting clothes on. To watch them learn that progression, because they didn't know it, right? When they were babies, it's not like they pulled clothes out, brushed their teeth, did everything that we do. They have to be taught it. And so they are shown, they're given the tools, they're given the knowledge and the skills. Sometimes we do it for them to show them how to do it so they see the process, and then we allow them to implement it. And then we have to stay focused on them every day to remind them to be consistent. Same thing for ourselves. We're no different anytime we're implementing something new. And then we have to, after a while, that consistency becomes routine. And think of all of us right now. Do you have to think right now when you do your morning routine, or does it happen subconsciously for you? Right? You get up, you do the same thing, it's habitual, and you follow through with it, and it's done, and you didn't even use any brain power. Well, when we're getting started and taking that initial action, it's the complete opposite. It's like we have to remind ourselves the night before, I'm going to do this tomorrow, depending on when it is during the day, right? Then we have to remind ourselves the morning of, okay, today is the day I'm doing this thing. Even more so when we take that initial action, right? Okay, I'm going to start this new, and I said practice. So maybe it's yoga, right? We're not even talking finance here. It's something new for our physical health. We decide stretching and flexibility and meditation are all important in our life. So we decide to implement and adopt the practice of yoga. Okay, great. Where do we begin? Oh, do I have the right tools? Oh, maybe I need to get a mat. Maybe I need to get some clothing. Maybe I need to get a block, whatever those things that are going to be used during that onset of the practice. Do we need to acquire certain skills? Maybe it's going to a class to get started versus doing it in your home, or putting up a video instead of just getting on the mat and, doing different moves that you think you've seen. There's this process, but once you know that process and have identified it, then it's the work of the initial start. And I want to open this up for conversation here as a group on this Thursday roundtable discussion about the focus of that initial start, because I think this is probably the most powerful thing, is taking the initial action. That's step one. If you don't ever take the initial action, you'll never start moving in that direction. So independent of what you're working on in your life, look at areas where you haven't taken that initial action, and then ask yourself, what is holding me back? Is it a knowledge? Is it a skill? Is it a tool? Is it a self-imposed limitation? And really dive down and focus on that thing, and then come up with a plan to overcome that. Because once you do, once I said, okay, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and I'm going to go for a mile walk, I had to do it for the first time. And when the alarm went off and I'm changing my routine and I'm like, I want to hit snooze, I have to do something to get over implementing those new things. And sometimes it starts way earlier, the night before, right? Laying out my stuff so that I can go for a walk without having to go through the brain damage in the morning of putting that stuff together, preparing to execute on my plan. Then maybe it's setting the alarm and knowing, hey, I don't need to wake up naturally. I need to jolt my body into waking up at this new time. The same thing for business stuff. If it's implementing follow-up phone calls or outreach for the first time, man, that first phone call feels like the phone weighs 10,000 pounds, right? Oh, I'm going to call up that person I just met for the first time. This is why 80% of people don't follow up a single time when they meet somebody new. So how do we, as individuals, take that first action? So guys, I'm going to put that out there. If anybody has anything to add, Ruben, yep, I see you with your hand up. Go ahead, my friend.
Okay. It happened this morning. I belong to a networking group, and this one networking group on Thursday, this is in Michigan.
Yeah.
And that means I have to get up I have to be ready at 7:30 in the morning. And the issues I have is sleep pattern disruptions.
Yeah.
Because my mind is constantly thinking of things that are going, and I'm looking at the clock at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And all of a sudden I got up and go, oh man, maybe I'll just pass up on this meeting. Well, no, I got up and forced myself through that. And guess what? I was the only one in that room. And then the leader appeared. Mm-hmm. Okay. The leader of the group. The bottom line is I showed him our interview and he wants to sign up. He said, this is the greatest thing since Swiss cheese. Okay. That would have never occurred had I just got the blanket and said, hey, forget it, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to attend that meeting. Now, the key is, I think after you take action, here's where it starts. And this is, I've asked a number of people and they have this main issue with it. It's called the follow-up process. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The follow-up process sets up the mind and saying, oh my gosh, it's a chore or it's a joy. Mm-hmm. If you can make those distinctions in your mind that it's a joy versus a chore, then you can go to step 1, step 2. I've been to step 15 before I got at least a positive understanding of the commitment that the person is going to make. Because in the back of my mind, it's saying, oh no, you're chasing people. You're right. Too salesy or whatever. You see how that mind works. So I have to get beyond that. So the key is, in order to satisfy that curiosity in the back of my brain, I have to structure my dialogue with that person on each phase of follow-up that I'm really looking out for their best interest and addressing their problems and keep on focusing the conversation pertaining to that. And when I do that, it gets away from that salesy, I'm trying to sell you something attitude.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, there's a few things, Ruben, that you mentioned there that I really want to call out. This is something that I love to do, obviously, is listen to everybody and then try and pull out and tease out the gold that we can all learn from and start implementing. So, Ruben, thank you so much for that. I know at the beginning of this year, we talked a bit about Zig Ziglar's book, Born to Win. And there's a section in there where he's talking about you get a lot more done with a get to do attitude than a have to do attitude. And I want to think about that, just comment right there, because Ruben, that's what you were talking about, changing that mindset, that mental block for yourself from a get to or from a have to a get to, right? Like I have to wake up at 5 a.m. Oh, it's just, now I'm already in a negative mind frame versus, oh my gosh, I get to get up at 5 a.m. and get my day started, you know, on all. Again, just that mental shift is part of what we call the AMP process, right? Attitude, moment, and process. The other thing that it makes me think of, Ruben, and it's pretty funny, anybody out there who's a Bill Murray fan, if you've ever seen What About Bob? You ever seen What About Bob, right? He's like this raging introvert, like can't even step out of the house. He's got his goldfish around his neck when he's going to his doctor's appointment. And the whole thing goes back to, what does he say? He says baby steps. Baby steps, getting on the bus. And Ruben, what you're talking about, where you're in the moment, and this is what we talk about on Mondays when we're talking the plan for the day and executing our plan. We don't have to be focused on anything else in our mind other than the here and the now. Parts of the here and the now might be planning for the future when you can extrapolate out into the distance, but majority of the time we need to be focusing on the tasks and the choices and the actions at hand. And we just baby step through that, right? And so for the initial implementation, it's like, okay, and again, I think it's nice to be thinking about sleep patterns, the disruption, because this is something new. We all have our existing patterns that we don't think about. And if we didn't do anything, we would live our lives based on how our mind prioritizes our time. And anytime we want to shift from that, we have to disrupt. There's going to be a shock. We have to realize that and account for that and plan for that. So Ruben's planning for the sleep disruption. He gets through it. He's going and overcoming the objections in his own mind or the excuses, right? You don't have to do it. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm going to tell you this story. On my 30th birthday, I wanted to be it's going to sound weird. I wanted to be the highest person in the world. And I'm from Colorado. I'm talking about a 14er here, not the other type of high. You know what I mean? So I said, okay, on my birthday, I'm going to hike up to the top of our tallest 14er in Colorado. And I know the only other two tallest 14ers in the United States are in Alaska and California. And I figure with the time zones, watching the sunrise on my birthday, I will be the highest person on my birthday when the sun rises. And so I set out on this hike, and I have to get up I have to arrive at the trailhead about 1 a.m. and I take a little bit of a nap, and then I get started hiking 2 a.m. I've got my backpack on and my poles, and I'm going up this trail and getting up. And you're excited at first. All right, I'm doing something new I've not done before. I'm excited about this. I already had the end result in mind, and that was sort of my motivation, which is an important thing here, right? What motivates you to overcome those personal objections? And for me, it was that shot. I'll find the picture and post it, but it was that shot, standing with your little sign at the top of Mount Elbert, 14,440 plus feet or whatnot. Here it is. I accomplished this goal today. And I remember at 12,000 feet, you hit the tree line and the trees go away. And now you're above the tree line if you've ever seen a mountain documentary. And I get there and I'm like, whoo, I've been hiking for a few miles here. I've got a thing on my back and I'm by myself. And, if I turn around now, nobody's going to know. I could just say that I did it, right? We talk about that in our head all the time. And the reality is, no, this is about me battling against my own self, and I'm going to continue on. There are things called these false summits, right? You think you're getting to the top, and then you get there and you realize just past your line of sight, it goes up again. So you're going to hit all of these mental barriers that are going to say, hey, you don't need to do this. Why are you doing this? And you start self-doubting and questioning and all of those types of things. And again, in that moment, in that time, you have to overcome that. I'm reminding myself of the end objective. I'm thinking about all the preparation I did. It's why give up now, and I'm already in it. And at some point, even on actions, and these could be for any action that you're taking, right? There's a part of suffering that happens in a way. And it could be a small suffering, it could be a big suffering, and you have to overcome that pain or that uncomfortableness of that suffering, right? And finally, you get up. I remember looking back and I saw a headlamp about a mile or two behind me. And I said, oh no, somebody's going to beat me to the top. You find new motivation, right? You find new ways to overcome getting over, under, around the obstacles or the objections. And then finally, I reached the summit and it was all worth it. Like in hindsight, right? The whole process was worth it. And as I'm walking back down to my car, a 9-mile hike, I kept telling myself, it wasn't as bad as you made it out when you're in the middle of the journey, right? But we have to almost embrace that journey and understand what it's going to entail. So I'm going to end with that story. Ruben, thank you for sharing. Mike, I see your hand up. Please add to the conversation. Thanks for joining.
No problem. One thing that I had written on my center, my paperwork, it says mindset, because that's exactly what you're talking about is, you want to bring it all together, mindset. We have to have that mindset in the morning. There was a book that I read, gosh, I wish I could remember the name of the author. Anyway, you have a task you need that you get to do, right? But you're like, oh, do I really want to do it? Just go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch, and
Yep.
Boom, you do it. And that kind of triggers your mind to execute, because we have to have that mindset to before we can get things started. So I think getting started, what's the initial thing? Mindset. You got to have it right in the mind that you're gonna get what you need done.
I think this is so important that you bring that up, that mindset topic, because that's right. I mean, there's a reason why we've even talked about the mindset of a champion. You know what I mean? And we've talked about that Zig Ziglar book, Born to Win. It's about having a mindset. There's a section in there, right? We've got to plan to win. That's one step, right? But then we have to prepare to win. And only when we do both of those things, right? And preparing is having the skills, the knowledge, and tools, everything that would potentially hold you back in executing your plan. Only when you've planned and you've prepared can you expect to win. And I think that's part of that mindset. A professional athlete is a great example of that, right? When they go into play a game, and it doesn't matter whether they're playing women's tennis, professional golf, gymnastics, football, any of those things, they're going in with that mindset of a champion. You know what I mean? If you've ever seen a boxer go into the ring, like they're already expecting to win the match well before they're even walking down the aisle to their song. And everything that they've done in preparation is about leading into that mindset all along the way. You ever seen their coaches and trainers talk to them? You're the champ. You're going to be the champ. You got it. It's a mindset, guys. Most everything. And Mike, I'm so glad you brought this up, because when we talk about getting started and we talk about taking that initial action, I think the biggest thing we can do is get in the right mindset. I think that we are our biggest critics. We are our biggest self-doubters. Heck, I would say we talk to ourselves worse than anybody in the world would talk to us. Have you ever noticed that, right? ER, you can't. Don't even try. Give up now. Like all of that self-doubt comes along us and nobody else sees it, right? It's the same thing when we look in the mirror and we notice that one thing on our outfit or on our hair or on our makeup. And we're like, everybody's going to see it. They're all going to look at it. They're going to see it right away and they're going to judge me for it. You know what I mean? And then you don't realize that they don't even notice that stuff. But we're so critical of ourselves in our mind that we limit ourselves. And if we can work to overcome that and put little strategies, tools, and techniques in the process, then when it comes to taking that initial action, we're already setting ourselves up for success. You know, so I like to think of it as links in a chain, and all those links in a chain. Sometimes we have to go back and we say, this is the link I'm most worried about supporting me, right? The initial action. But then we go a few links before and we're like, but this is the link that sets me up for failure. You know, sometimes stepping back and looking at the whole process, the whole, plan and preparing is part of that whole mental preparation. So Mike, thank you for adding that mindset thing. Any tips anybody has for mindset, or go ahead, keep going.
Oh, well, I was just going to tips on mindset. I that's something I deal with myself. You talk about developing the habits and how we remind our kids to, hey, do this, this is a new thing for you. We're going to do it. And you have to have that reminder for the kids, and you're the reminder for the kids. Well, I feel like I need that reminder for me to do the steps that I'm supposed to do. So I don't know if we didn't mention an accountability partner, but when you talk about developing habits, having that accountability partner come back and say, hey, did you do X, Y, and Z? Oh, no, I didn't. Okay. So that's kind of like having that person there talking to you, reminding you about that stuff.
Well, again, we're talking about all these tips and techniques, and Mike, you're hitting home runs here, right? Accountability is one of the biggest things. And actually success in anything requires some accountability. This is one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of team sports, is because all of your teammates hold each other accountable. In some of the team sports I played, I had a singular role and I had to execute my role correctly, but I wanted to hold my teammates accountable so that they executed their roles, because I couldn't do their roles for them. And we all held each other accountable, because here's the reality. We're not going to be 100% on the top of our game every single day. So one of the best things that you can do to make forward progress, get started and stay consistent, is to have an accountability partner. You can use your community as accountability. You could use your friends and your family as accountability. Have you ever heard this? Like people who go out there and they sort of broadcast to the world they're getting started with something have a higher likelihood of actually starting. Hey, everybody, I'm so excited. I'm starting a new plan next week. Then there's this expectation that if I don't get started, I just alerted everybody that I was going to do it and they're going to know that I didn't do it. Or finding a partner. I read a study once where they said, it was something about business success. And it was like a 2-to-1. I'm paraphrasing here, but like a 2-to-1 ratio of rate of success for businesses that were founded with 2 founders versus a single founder. Think about that. And I would argue, Mike, to your point, it's because there's some accountability when there's 2 of you. You know what I mean? And I've got an amazing partner. You guys have all had an opportunity potentially to meet Guy. Look, we hold each other accountable. And I will tell you what, there are days when I am off and Guy lifts me up and holds me accountable. And there are days that he is off and I lift him up and we're both accountable. And then look, if we're drawing a matrix out of all the options, there are days when we're both on the top of our game and we're sort of feeding off of each other and it's like rocket fuel. And then few and far between, there are also days where we're both at the bottom of our game and we lean into other resources to either hold us accountable or inspire us to motivate ourselves to move forward. So again, I think accountability is so powerful, especially the initial accountability. Some of that sometimes might come from a coach or a trainer or a mentor. I remember starting workout programs and I wouldn't have shown up unless the coach was going to hold me accountable and the teammates were going to hold me accountable. And then when I showed up, they were the ones that helped me go through everything. And again, until you can get to the habit. So, to what Mike's saying, we do that for other people. How do you do it for yourself? How do you do self-accountability? And then if you can't do that, how do you find other people to hold you accountable? And something I suggest to everybody, and I've mentioned this before, and maybe you've thought about it, but still didn't take action on it, is who's going to be your accountability partner? Heck, who's going to be your partner in whatever you're working on? Sometimes that's your spouse. Like I say, honey, I'm going to work on this, but I need you to make sure that I do it, and then she'll be the reminder. Hey, did you fix that thing? Or did you do that thing? Or did you follow through with that thing? And I'm like, oh my God, thank you. Sometimes I've had it happen where I have to drop everything in that instance because subconsciously I was avoiding or procrastinating. And then I'm like, you're right. Boom. Another thing, Mike, you mentioned, and this is a technique, I think it was Mel Brooks, who talked about that 3-2-1 go or whatnot. It's sort of like this subconscious thing we could do for ourselves. Right? What was that?
Mel Robbins.
I think I said Mel Brooks last time, the comedian, right? No, Mel Robbins, right?
Mel Brooks is more farting around the campfire.
That's right. That's right. Either way, right? No, but Mel Robbins, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or 3, 2, 1, go. Here's a simple technique that we can all implement. If you've never done this before, try it a few times, and you'll be amazed at how something so simple can work. And it's a tool in our tool belt we can use at any time. So again, it's as simple as saying, anytime you in your mind know you need to do something, but you are holding back. A good example of this, my alarm just started going off. It's 5 a.m. The kids have been up sick all night long, and I've got major excuses in my head of why I should just hit snooze. But instead of hitting snooze consciously in my mind, I say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And just like a rocket ship, the moment I hit 1, I have to take action. Independent of what that is. If you have to do that baby step, what about Bob every day, all day long on every activity? Leverage the tool as long as it helps you make forward progress. People might look at you funny if you're just counting aloud 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But if that's what it takes to do it, I'm not going to judge. And if people are judging you for that, they're not making progress. Maybe you can share the technique with them or why you're doing it. But if it starts helping you, and this is the reality of the whole thing and why we have this conversation, is because we truly want everybody in the community here with Elify to go from wherever you are right now to wherever you want to go, right? How powerful is that? And if we can collectively focus together our energy, our knowledge, our resources to support each other in helping us be successful in anything we want to accomplish. Wow, how powerful is that? And you guys saw on Monday, I posted this little before and after. It was sort of this funny thing because I see them all the time. We see them all the time, right? We see that person who is successful at X, Y, and Z, and they're successful because they show us, right? Here's my before, oh my gosh, and here's my after, oh wow. You know what I mean? And we say, oh, if we could only achieve or do what that person did. And the reality is the key to all of that success boiled down to one thing. You have to take action. You have to go out and take the action on what's required to make that forward progress. And you have to identify what those actions are, because every scenario is going to be unique to you, where you are right now and where you want to get to. I think there are some other techniques there. I've heard things like boiling your actions down to the lowest common denominator to get started, right? If you say, hey, my end goal is to wake up at 4:30 or 4 o'clock and go for a 2-mile run, try waking up at 4 o'clock and running 2 miles if you've never done it before. I tell you what, you will hit every excuse in the book not to do it. But if you say, hey, you know what? That's my goal. But today, in order to get started down this path, I think I'm going to wake up at 6 and I'm going to walk around the block. You have to be so confident that you can implement that one thing, no questions asked. Maybe it's not waking up earlier and you're going to break it down to 2 things. I need to start walking around the block before I can even wake up at 4 a.m. and run 2 miles. Let's baby step this thing and break our goals or our plan or our path down so that we can go and survive on the long term. And here's my theory behind this. And I open this up to anybody who wants to have the discussion. My theory is we are all so much in this mind frame of instant gratification, right? I want to lose 50 pounds tomorrow, that it either needs to work immediately or we won't pursue the long-term goal. We don't want to suffer through the journey or enjoy the journey or get to do the journey because we're so focused on the end result, and that's the only measuring stick. And the reality is, what was it? Either Atomic Habits or it might have been one of the other books. But even if you make a little bit of progress, it's better than where you are now. And if you make 65% progress towards something, you will be blown away with the results. And yet we get into this mindset that everything has to be perfect and we have to get it immediately. And I think that holds us back. Anybody have any thoughts to that? Again, we want to focus the conversation about, your plan, what you want to do, what actions, you've already done the plan, you've prepared, but you're just that initial force of friction, getting started, initial action. What is holding me back? What can I do? I think if you boiled that down and said, look, this is what I want to be doing, and this is what I want to be doing consistently, but there's got to be a ramp up period to get there. And if I plan for that ramp up period, I'm going to be more likely to adopt that and do it long term. So thoughts, anybody?
Yeah. ER?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Jeff,
So
good to see you.
I'm trying to absorb and use my mega memory but PML. So I got people, money, and location. So hopefully I can because that's everything that you guys have all talked about today. But it starts with Monday when I opened my big mouth and made the commitment that by next Monday I would have my one thing done for me,
Yep.
VSL. Okay.
Yep.
But the very next day, and I also said I'd get a haircut. That got done. But these 3, let's see if we can see these 3. Oh, wait, they're gone. People. So let's start with people. So I reached out to our group here, or the group on Monday. And so now we can reiterate, and then these 3 chaps right there. Okay. That's in front of my new ride. I won't tell you who they are other than we're the 3 co-founders. We're at the bank. I tell you what, when you sit in front of the banker for an hour and you all put in, we're 33 1/3%. We put a $100 bill to open our account. So we've been working on this program for over a year, but now we're official. We've got the LLC, and now it's my job to do, VSL, funnels, blah, 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 digital cards, the whole 9 yards. So what's interesting is that this group, or the Monday group, and you guys can, beat me up too if Monday I come on and I'm not quite done. But I also laid it out to my wife, and we had a long good discussion. She goes, I've noticed you, and, sometimes watching the NBA finals, or, getting in, and when I'm wondering why shouldn't you be over on working on your launch. And so people, number one, 100%, because I can guarantee you, here's what I had to do yesterday, which was very difficult, you guys. I have a cousin who's about my same age, and we're very close. We've gone through the losses together and whatever. And he rarely gets a day off. He works in retail now. And he said, Boggs, I got 2 days off. And I pretty much told him that I would do it. And I finally, after that call Monday, because I committed to you guys and I committed to my partners to get this timing done, I had to tell him, had to call him up first thing in the morning. He's ready to go. I said, dude, I can't have another break in my schedule. I can't have an interruption. So people, the other thing is money. If you never, it's funny how if you spend money on something, it commits you, right? ER, you mentioned joining a 10-week program at a club. I've done those before. True. I'm paying that money. I'm showing up at 5 a.m., 9 a.m., whatever, and doing that grueling workout because I paid. But if it's, hey, I joined a membership at a club and it's kind of paid and it's just up to me, I can walk in the door, swipe my card, it's free, or just walking around the block. But when you pay for something, and that's why if you guys with your Elify shuffle business, whatever business you're doing, don't be afraid. I like to give free value, but I guarantee you I will charge when it comes time to charge, because if I don't, my students or my clients, my customers, they will not listen to the presentation. They won't watch the webinar. They won't do it. If you pay for something, you will attend and you will show up. So people, money, again, are motivators, and then location. And that, like I'm out on the deck today looking over the lake. But my wife said, if you want to hook up the camper and get away from me and the dog today, you can. See, so I got that support system saying, change your location, right? Russell Brunson does this all the time. He'll check out into a hotel, sit on the roof away from his 5 kids, his wife, his employees, and sit on the roof. So I don't know if you do that, or you and Guy, where you just change locations and go work in the park or whatever. But I have to do that sometimes. It's kind of like when you were in college, you had to get in the library to actually, do your work because you wanted to get out of there and get back to, hanging out with your buddies in the dorms. So those are just some thoughts. Does that resonate with any of you guys?
Yeah, I think that's great, Jeff. And again, if it resonates with you, raise your hand, add your comments, put it in the chat, or come on live. And I really like your idea about people, about money, about places, on that type of thing. I would say tell everybody, whatever you're working on, whatever you're trying to make progress towards, make that announcement, make it public. Don't keep it private, because you can leverage those people or the fear of them holding it against you as motivation to go forward. The money thing. There was an app I had heard a while back, Jeff. It was called Stick, like sticking to something, or the carrot and the stick. Mm-hmm. And the premise behind this app was like, you would take a large portion of money, right? Something that is significant to you, where the fear of loss is so great, you would do whatever it takes not to lose it, right? So somebody would come up to you and say, okay, Jeff, how much could you afford to stake where if you lost it, it would be very painful, but it wouldn't break you? You know what I mean? And somebody might say it's $100. Somebody might come back and say it's $10,000. Again, this is the motivator, right? Or the inspirator, if you want. And you would stake that. And then they would say, okay, who do you like least in the entire world? Maybe it's an ex-spouse, or maybe it's the political party that you're not affiliated with, and then they would say, okay, you're going to stake this money, and if you don't accomplish whatever you're setting out to go, we're going to give it to that other place. And if you do, and you validate it, we'll just give that money back to you. Again, money is a massive motivator, either the end result that happens when you do the thing because you earn that money, or the fear of loss of staking money and potentially losing it, like investing in a workshop or a workout routine or a program or a process. I agree. I was doing swim in the morning, and I'd buy these packs of my swim passes to go to Coach Swim. And it's a heavy investment, but you want to show up there and use them because they expire. So it becomes this motivator to participate in that. And I also think just the shift, right? The change in environment that Jeff talks about is so important. Sometimes we need to jolt ourselves to get out of the existing habits or patterns that we're in, which a lot of that can be based on location. If you've watched most of these videos, guys, these 4 walls that you see behind me, you're going to see them in most of these videos because this is where I typically sit down and do focused work. But to Jeff's point, there are days where it's, nope, you know what? I need to grab the laptop, go sit at the coffee shop and be one of those people who sits there for 3 hours and sips on a coffee while they work from a laptop. And people are like, what the heck does that guy do? I do a work from home and now I'm trying to get out of the office and work from somewhere else, a park, a coffee shop, et cetera. These are all strategies that we can all implement. And I think if it's going to help you make a change, implement them, right? Shout it from the rooftops. Hey, everybody, this is what I'm working on. Here's monetarily what I get when I accomplish it or what I lose if I don't, and here's where I'm going to go to work on these things. If it means going down to the basement, locking yourself in the closet, or going to the coffee shop to get it done, why not do those things if what you're working towards is where you want to go? And I think the last thing I want to throw out there, we got about 15 minutes left. And I think this is a big thing on, going back to taking that initial action, about overcoming what's holding you back and really about getting started. And it's this 3-letter word that a lot of people talk about. You'll hear it from gurus and things like that, but a lot of us never really take the time to soul search and figure it out. And it's WHY. What is your why? What is your why? Have you asked yourself that question? Because the why itself could be the ultimate motivator, the ultimate thing that inspires you to do what you do. I talk about 3 big freedoms that I want everybody to achieve because they're so powerful, right? Everybody typically talks about financial freedom, which is great. Having all the money you need to do whatever you want is a nice thing, but you want to have the time to be able to enjoy it. So time freedom is a huge one. That's a why motivator for me, for sure. I'll tell you what, my family is a huge motivator, and that time freedom and family are so important that it will allow me to focus and be diligent in the time I've allotted to do work stuff so that I have time available to spend with my family, right? Take the kids to swim lessons, pick them up from school, pick them up when they're sick, do all of those types of things. And the last one, location freedom. Again, you can build a life by design, right? We talked about this before. You are capable of achieving anything you want. As Zig Ziglar would say, you are born to win, right? You just need to prepare and plan so that you can expect to win. And I think we all have to believe that. I was laughing because I had watched this series with my wife, Ted Lasso. Anybody seen that series? Great series. Right? About a coach who comes into a soccer league, never coached the sport, and they're trying to create a winning team. And one of the big words he writes above the doorway, believe. We've got to believe first and foremost that we can get to where we're going. If you don't believe it, you won't achieve it. I think I've heard that quote somewhere. You got to believe it so you can achieve it, But also, I had a mentor, I've said this story before. He said, belief alone will not get the result. You do have to believe you can get to the result, but it also takes action. Belief plus action equals the result, So we all have to have hope and a belief that we can go down the path we're laying for ourselves and have confidence that we can execute on that. And if you're looking at your plan and you don't believe it, you don't have hope in your mind that you can execute on it, then you need to revise your plan until you're meeting that criteria. It might be taking that bigger plan and stretching it out longer. How many people would love to make $1 million this year? How many of you feel like that's a realistic goal, or you haven't hit some other milestones potentially that are going to take you in that direction? Because in my mind, it's harder to make $1 million this year if you haven't made 6 figures this year. Or if you've never made 6 figures before in your lifetime. Sometimes that's the glass ceiling or that self-imposed sort of limitation. Well, I've never made more than, $60,000, $50,000. How am I going to ever expect to make, $100,000, let alone $1 million, right? Okay, well, I could break it down and I could say, what's my first milestone? Yes, my big, hairy, audacious goal, my BHAG, is to make $1 million in a year. But my first goal should be, I need to make consistently 6 figures, because if I can't pass that point, How am I going to get to the 7-figure mark? You know? And again, as we work through that, this does not mean that you can't scale faster. Guys, this is about getting started. As we build momentum, have you ever realized getting started feels like you're going uphill, but once you're doing something, it feels like you're running downhill? Right? How do we get over that initial force of friction to start getting to the point where it feels like we're running downhill, where it feels effortless, where it feels like it's habitual, where it feels like it's subconscious? It's all the repetition and getting over that initial force of friction. So we have to develop our whys, because whys are so powerful. Think about this. If you have a big enough why, you would walk on fire to accomplish it or to get it, right? If you had a big enough why, you would do what Guy showed on that Life by Design shirt. It says WIT, whatever it takes, right? When you have a big enough why, when the hurdle comes your way, and trust me, guys, it's going to come your way, right? Your plan, show him your plan, and he's going to laugh in your face, as the old quote says. We're going to start executing our plan, and an obstacle is inevitably going to come up. We call them the expected unexpectancies. And when that happens, we have to have a strategy to overcome, to have the grit to go over, around, under, or through any obstacle, to pivot and then get around and course correct, etc. So I think some of those things that are the motivators, the why, the inspiration, the thing that gets you up and gets you going towards that, needs to be that daily reminder. This is what I'm doing it for. Maybe it's putting that picture or that vision board in the office or on the desk. Maybe it's me looking over and seeing the picture of my family on the bookshelf and saying, that's the why. That's the why that makes me do the things I need to do, but don't necessarily want to do, or get over that force of friction to do something for the first time. Okay, guys, as we round this thing out, we got about 8 minutes left. Anybody else have anything they want to add? I've seen some chat stuff as well, but anybody want to come on live, share a tip, a trick, a strategy, or any other comments or thoughts based on what we've talked about today? Yeah, Danon, always a pleasure. Go ahead, my friend.
Hello, everybody. For the most part, just to even get started to taking action, you have to schedule.
Yeah.
A schedule is probably like the most important thing, as opposed to what a person needs to do as far as taking action. Because if you don't schedule it, you find yourself going through, like you said at the beginning of the show, you find yourself going through different loopholes and nothing gets done. So if you have a schedule, then you most likely to get something done, if not everything done.
100%, Danon. I can't agree with you more. And your schedule is your plan, guys. These things are almost interchangeable. And I want to call something out because it's a huge celebration. If you heard on Monday when we were talking about the plan and all of that type of stuff, Danon said, well, first of all, Jeff said, here's what I'm going to do. And he threw out sort of the challenge to everybody else. I'm going to get my DSL done. I'm going to have it done by next Monday. This is it. Hold me accountable. And Danon raises his hand less than a week ago, right? It's only been 4 days. And he says, here's this one thing, right? It doesn't need to be everything. Pick one thing, pick another thing, pick another thing. Just start getting wins. I had a mentor once who said, look, ER, you're missing all your 3-pointers. Right? Metaphorical 3-pointers. You're trying to shoot for the basket and get a good win, put some points on the board, and you're whiffing every time. Bricks are bouncing off the hoop, And he said, here's what you need to do. You need to walk up underneath the basket and put in a layup, just to remind yourself that you can put the ball through the hoop. You need to do it again and again, and then take a step back and start shooting some little bank shots. He goes, then you keep moving back, and eventually you'll remind yourself that you can shoot the 3-pointers. Danon, your one item was to do a Zoom background image. And here I am 3 days later, and you have a win, and you need to celebrate that, right? Here's another key. Celebrate the wins. This is a win. And then you're going to identify another one, and you're going to plan a time period to execute that next activity. And then you're going to get that one done, and it'll be your second win, then your third win, then your fourth win. And then all of a sudden, Danon's feeling that he's starting to build some momentum. The things that he's planning to get done, he's executing on. And guys, I don't know. I had a chance that I didn't have before to scan Danon's QR code, and he's got it linked to a card on here. And it's done. Guys, he's checked it off the list. Now it doesn't have that burden on his shoulders anymore of one item that can support him in executing his business and going from point A to point B, etc. And now he can move on to the next item. But I think in sort of closing, one key out of that is to celebrate the win. Even if the victory is super small, guys, celebrate it. I'm the biggest person of being guilty to this. I'm always thinking about the next thing. And I fail sometimes to celebrate the huge win, right? Every day can be a win for you. Every day can be a win for you. If you wake up every day as a reset to start the day, hey guys, today's a new day. This is why we call it the present, because it is a gift and it allows us to make choices all day long. We can't change anything that happened yesterday, and it doesn't matter how successful we were, if we won yesterday, or if we just failed and fell flat on our faces yesterday for the 10th day in a row, for the 10th year in a row. It doesn't matter. Today's the new day, right? So we reset ourselves. We have a plan for the day. We execute that plan. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to make progress. And if we get about 60% done on that day, we win the day. Big W for the day. If you've never won the day, focus on one day of just winning it. Then wipe the slate clean, focus on the next day. You don't have to think about tomorrow today, guys. We have to think about what we need to do today. We can do our plan for the week one day, like on Monday or Sunday, and then it's no, what do I have today? And then when you get to Friday or Saturday or Sunday, when you go to repeat that cycle all over again or that routine all over again, you can hold yourself accountable. You can have other people hold you accountable. You can look at the game film of what progress you made that week and where you can come back and make it better. And if we do incremental improvement over time and we just focus on the here and now of taking little actions and celebrating those wins, inevitably your routine is going to change. Your mind frame is going to change. Your progress is going to change. And you'll look back over time and realize, man, it didn't feel like I was making much change in the here and now. But when I look back on it, I can't believe it. So Dana, I saw your hand go up. Any final thoughts, comments? Go ahead.
I just want you to know, EI, that it wasn't as easy as you said it was. It took a little more than 30 minutes to an hour. It took longer than that, but it wasn't as easy. But it's done. It's done. But for the most part, it's probably, I had fun doing it. So, but just to know that it wasn't my best, and I actually had to change my QR code. I just was trying going through the motions of trying to get it done. So now you'll probably see more QR codes popping up like Ruben.
But this is what I love, guys. This is what I love. That initial force of friction has now been overcome. If you have to trick yourself in saying it's going to be easy just to get started on it, and then when you're in the heap of it, you're like, oh shit, I figured this would take 15 minutes. It's going to take 2 hours. Guys, guess what? You're now in it. You're in it. You know what I mean? It's like Guy is from an agricultural family. Okay. They did a lot of not farming, but cattle ranching and things like that, guys. And I don't know if you know anything about cows, but whatever you put in the front, it comes out the back. And depending on where you are in the hierarchy of the family, depends on who gets the shovel, right? They might say, hey, this is going to be an easy one. I need you to go out to the pins and start shoveling. It'll only take you 15 minutes. Guys, when you're in the mix and the job is at hand, you start doing the work until the work gets done, right? That's his agricultural mentality. And I think we can all learn from that type of thing. Once you start the work, do it till the work gets done, or do it till you can get to a stopping point and then make sure you pick it back up, but complete and carry on till the work is done. Yeah, Dana, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just like, due to the fact I'm from the Midwest, it's just like when I go down south and you ask somebody down south, like, where's the nearest liquor store or grocery store? They say up the street, and you be driving for 30 to 40 minutes to get to the store that you have to go to. So I understand what you're talking about.
You know what I mean? Like, hey, again, like if you have to trick yourself and say, we do sprint planning, right? And one of these keys to sprint planning is I make a list of all of the action items I need to take, whether that's a meeting or a task. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to allocate a certain amount of time that I estimate would be for that, because I don't want to bite off more than I can chew. And I try to be conservative in that estimate. But Dana, to your point, sometimes my estimate is so far off. And when I get into it, you're just like, oh man, I estimated an hour and this thing's going to be 4 hours today. And this is one of those things why, as a strategy, we talk about when you allocate your time, allocate about 60% of that time. And Dana, you were talking about planning, right? Block out time blocks of when you're going to work on your list items, and then get on that and work throughout your time block. And if you get in on it and you say, okay, look, this is taking longer than I planned, try to keep about 40% of your time as flexible. It doesn't mean you're not going to do anything during that time. It just means you work on more of your tasks during that time if you don't eat it up somewhere else, because inevitably something's going to come up, a fire's going to pop up, things are going to pop out of the woodwork. Guys, I was supposed to work all day yesterday, and guess what popped up? 2 sick kiddos. You know what I mean? And I'll tell you what, my why is my family. So the most important, highest priority thing always takes precedence. So I had to set that work aside for that day. I got a W for my family stuff, but I got a big L for my work stuff for the day. And that's okay. I have to be willing to accept that the unexpected things are going to be expected to pop up. And I have to juggle and deal with that stuff. And even though I didn't win yesterday, heck, I might not even catch up and win today. I'm looking at, am I going to win the week? And even if I don't win this week, guess what? Again, tomorrow is going to be a new day, right? I can reset. They say in entrepreneurship, you, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a self-employed person, as a, anybody trying to do anything for themselves, look, you can fire yourself every day as long as you are willing to rehire yourself in the morning. Again, it's okay. Take it one day at a time, and then just get in and start taking massive action. If you have to baby step into it, start baby stepping into it, but make forward progress. Because here's the reality in closing. Inaction is worse. Any action is better than taking no action at all. Okay? Any action, even the wrong action, is better than taking no action at all. Here's the reality. The time is going to tick, right? Sand is going to fall out of the hourglass no matter what. The world is going to keep on spinning. And if you're standing still, it's going to pass you by. Whereas taking action immediately, even the wrong action, is going to help you make forward progress. Now, Mike, I'm going to call you out as we close this out because I see you maybe yelling at the screen. You got something last to add, and I want to get that gold nugget before we close this thing down. So if you don't mind adding it, go ahead, my friend.
Hey, yeah. I just was talking about the whole time blocking. Getting on what Damon was talking about, because get it on your schedule. That's huge, because that way it shows you what you've got going on, and because if you can't fit it in there, you can't fit it in there. And I was like you yesterday. I had all this stuff planned, and my kids, man, he had a bike accident, when he's bicycling that took a grinding halt to everything else, and I had to drop what I was doing to go and pick him up. And so that took 2 hours of the things that I had planned, but family comes first, right? But you got to time block stuff, and that way you can see, because the other thing is realistic schedules. We have a lot of stuff that we want to get to, but after we time block it, we're like, oh crap, I don't have enough time to get all this done, because you've got to provide time for your family too.
100%. And sort of in closing on what Mike was talking about, glad I've got the answers every time people bring up the questions, guys. This is the what's important now type of sheet. To what Mike is saying, guys, we have a million things we all want to get done, and we don't necessarily manage our time. We are all dealing with the same amount of time. Even the most successful person that you want to emulate their success in whatever you're working on, they have the same time constraint you do. Think about that. That's the fixed level playing field we're all on, is that time constraint. And here's the reality. If you do not get 100% of the things done that you need to get done, guess what? The world isn't going to end. In fact, a lot of those things will be sitting there tomorrow or the next day or the next day. And it's really about how long is it going to take you to get things done, not whether you get them all done today. Additionally, as part of that, what is important right now? The biggest key, if you've got 100 things sitting on your plate, is to find the top 3 things every single day that you can execute on today. So if Mike is planning out his day and he's got 10 items on his day, and he's going down working on stuff, the first item that he wants to be working on is the most important item. If you haven't read that book or listened to that book, Eat That Frog, right? We want to eat the most important thing. That it might be that thing that you're seeing on your list show up over and over and over again because you've been procrastinating on it. But when I make my task list, circle 3 items every day. These are the 3 things, and they could be on anything. It could be part of your business, your sales, your marketing. It could be part of your family stuff, your health, your faith. Doesn't matter. Whatever those things are, circle the highest priority ones and then check those off first. That way, if shit hits the fan, pardon my French, right, and something pops up that's unexpected or takes priority and precedence over everything else, I'll give you one. Mike, your kid fell off the bike. Look, the other day we went to turn on the AC because it's heating up in Colorado, and nothing happened. My wife is like, "Hey, it's blowing air, but it's not cold." I'm like, "Why isn't it cold?" Well, that's because that compressor that sits outside just went whiff. Okay, well, that's unexpected. And guess whose priority it is to be comfortable and cool in the house? Like, I've got a little hand in that, but I've got a family that's saying, look, if we're going to be in here, we want to be comfortable. Okay, boom, priority goes way up on the list on something I didn't even plan for. So I have to take some of my flex time, spend time, move some things around, call, get the quotes, do all of that type of stuff. But once it's off the list, I can move on to the next priority thing. I can pick up where I left off. And if you work from the top down on highest priority, you're always going to be making forward progress. And think about this Pareto's principle. In closing, we've talked about Pareto's principle. If you don't know who Pareto is, go Wikipedia, go Google, look up Pareto principle. It's the old 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the results come from 20% of the efforts or individuals, etc. It's applicable all over the place. It's a good rule, general rule, that 20% of the items are going to account for 80% of the progress. So if you had 10 items, did you know that 2 of those items will take you almost 80% of the way there? If you could identify those 2 and make those the first highest priority items that you get done, think about how you're accelerating your progress forward. Then you can work on the other 8 items that are going to close out that last 20%. And if you're diligent about working on those top priority items, guys, that's when they say doing work for work's sake or busy work. We don't want to be doing that. We want to be efficient with our time. So that way we can have time freedom. I'll tell you right now, there are items that I put on my task list that are such low priority, they never end up getting done. And then they end up falling off because I realized they weren't important in the first place. And however, all I see is a lot of people sometimes just working on those things that don't move the needle at all. And it's doing work for work's sake or just trying to be busy. And the reality is the people who are doing what we want to get to, they're just doing the high priority items that have the biggest impact, right?
Or task avoidance. They do those low priority things because they don't want to, they're avoiding the more important stuff.
My wife calls me out on that. She's like, "Well, why are you cleaning up the garage for the 3rd time you are organizing this stuff? Don't we have some other things we need to do?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just avoiding that, But thanks for keeping me accountable. I guess I should stop cleaning up and go out and take care of that one thing." Again, when we start listening and looking, guys, we can start to see the patterns. We can start to see the skills and the tools and the process and the program. And all we need to do is implement it. And here it is in closing, guys. If you stuck around this whole time, here it is in closing. We said it at the beginning, the before and after. At the end of the day, it's going to take action, and it's going to take the initial action. You, for yourself, need to identify what that initial action is that's going to take you from point A to point B on whatever journey you're traveling down. And then you need to take massive action. Identify the most important things, whether it's preparation, knowledge, skill, tool. Make sure you've prepared to execute that plan. And then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Get out there and start taking action on those things. And don't forget to celebrate the wins and the forward progress that you're making so that you can continue to build momentum so that the things that are new become recurring, right? Become habitual, and then it becomes second nature. And all of a sudden, you're going to wake up a year from now. Here's the reality, right? I like to think of 100 reps. All of a sudden, you're going to wake up 100 reps from now saying, wow, I made more progress than I realized, and I've adopted something new. And now it's become subconscious, and it's the new way of doing things. So With that being said, everybody, I know we're a little bit over time. I want to thank you guys for spending time, as always, here. I know and believe that time is the most valuable asset we have. I think most of us don't even understand how to value our own time. And the fact that you've spent a little bit of time here just musing with me on these concepts is really appreciated. My number one goal with all of this is that we learn from each other and support each other so that we can all be successful. And I would encourage you to identify your top priority items, get started on them. And if you know somebody who needs to hear this message, if this inspired you today or helped you out in any way, even if there's just one comment in here, I'd encourage you guys, or even challenge you guys, get out there and share this information with somebody else. Invite them to join this open community where we can all work together towards our individual successes. So with that being said, everybody, I want to thank you guys so much for Thursday. A quick reminder, our next call is going to be tomorrow, Friday, with the founders. Again, Guy is traveling right now, so it will be me. That's 10 a.m. Mountain Time. We're going to roll into a will, skill, and refill over the weekend. Even if that's your work time for your side hustle or whatever, you take some time to do what you need to do. And then we'll be back on Monday, sprint planning. And then on Tuesday, Tech Tuesday, and we're going to rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So we will see everybody tomorrow for Friday with the founders. Thanks again for all of your guys' input. Take care and have an excellent day. Bye-bye, everybody.